BabyFirst. Click the subscribe button below.
Adventure, fun, and fantasy are waiting on the shelf. A story's so much better with a friend than by yourself. The cover picture is a doorway to another land. So gather round and let the story take us by the hand. We're telling tales with friends, and we've got plans for you. Gaga's playing Goldilocks, this bear is peekaboo. Here's Tilly, Larry, and our Harry, great to have you all. Stories are for everyone, the young, old, big, and small. Tales and Friends. The Elves and the Shoemaker. The shoemaker is played by Sammy. The wife is played by Eve. The elves are played by the color crew. The kids are played by Gugu and Gaga. There once was an old shoemaker and his wife. They were very good people, and even though they didn't have much for themselves, always helped the needy families in their village. One day, the shoemaker saw a barefoot child in the street and gave her his last pair of new shoes. When he returned home, he looked at his barren work table and sighed to his wife.
We only have 2 small pieces of leather left, not enough to make even one more pair of shoes.
The old shoemaker was worried that they would run out of money. If you help others, then others will help you, his wife smiled. This made the old man feel better because he knew his wife was right.
Yes, we will be okay,
he said and got ready for bed. When they woke up the next day, they were surprised by what they saw on the table. A pair of new shoes.
What in the world? Who made these?
The old man said. His wife was just as confused as he was. Not me, she said, but maybe we can sell these today. And that's exactly what happened. Later that day, the shoemaker sold the shoes, giving him enough money to buy leather for 2 more pairs of shoes. But on his way to purchase the leather, he saw a boy in the street asking for food. The old man looked at the money in his hand and gave some to the boy. The boy's eyes widened and he ran off to the market. Later that evening, the shoemaker returned home. He told his wife that he helped a poor child, but now they only have enough leather to make 1 new pair of shoes. If you help others, then others will help you, his wife reminded him. He nodded warmly, set the scraps of leather on the table, and went to bed. When they woke up the next day, they were surprised again at what they saw on the table. 2 new pairs of shoes.
Who is making us these shoes? The old man asked.
We must find whoever is helping us and thank them, the shoemaker said. Yes, his wife agreed, and let's give them milk and cookies to show them how much we care. So that night, they set more leather on the table and hid in the corner with a tray of milk and cookies, waiting to see who came. They waited and waited, and just when they were about to give up, 2 little elves with big eyes and big ears scurried across the floor wearing tattered old clothes. The elves jumped onto the table and got to work making new pairs of shoes. The shoemaker and his wife smiled as they watched the curious creatures work. Finally, the shoemaker and his wife stepped out from the shadows holding a tray of cookies and glasses. We want to thank you for helping us, the wife smiled.
Would you join us for a snack?
The shoemaker asked. The elves sat down at the table and gobbled up all the cookies.
Where do you live?
The shoemaker asked.
Under a bridge in the village,
said one of the elves.
It gets cold at night, but we huddle together to keep warm.
If you help others, then others will help you.
the shoemaker remembered.
You no longer have to live under the bridge, he exclaimed.
Please come and live with us and we can be one big happy shoemaking family, his wife said. The elves jumped to their feet and gave the shoemaker and his wife big hugs. And from that night on, they lived happily ever after, making shoes and eating milk and cookies. The end.
Your child's app for the complete learning experience. Numbers, letters, colors, and more. Dozens of games, videos, and activities are all waiting for your little one to learn and enjoy. First, the complete learning experience. Search for BF100 on the app stores.
Download first.
The Bremen Town Musicians. Donnie the donkey is played by Lift. Ruff the dog is played by Push. Kitty the cat is played by Carrie. And Billy the bird is played by Larry. Once upon a time, there was a town named Bremen, and in that town was a farm. And on that farm lived 3 friends, Donnie the donkey, Ruff the dog, and Kitty the cat. They loved each other and they loved their farm, and more than anything, they loved making music together. But one winter, there was a storm that raged and roared and broke all their instruments. This made them very sad.
Yeah,
Donnie the donkey brayed.
life on this farm would be so much better if my piano wasn't broken and we could make music together like we used to.
Donnie didn't know what else to do. He stood in the field and he'd and hawed over and over.
Ee-yaw! Ee-yaw! Ee-yaw!
Across the farm, Ruff the dog's ears perked up. What was that sound? He followed it all the way to the field.
Ee-yaw!
When he got there, he saw Donnie hee-hawing.
Ee-yaw!
Woof! Barked Ruff. I heard a sound. Was it music? Donnie shook his head.
How could it be music? My piano was broken when the storm raged and roared, remember? I can't play any music.
Ruff nodded. And I wish my drumsticks hadn't been broken. Then we could play music together. Donnie and Ruff didn't know what else to do, so they sat in the field and made their sounds over and over.
Ee-yaw!
Woof, woof!
Ee-yaw!
Woof, woof! From the barn, Kitty the cat's ears perked up. What was that sound? She followed it all the way to the field.
Meow,
Kitty said.
I heard a sound. Was it music?
Donnie and Ruff shook their heads.
How could it be music? All our instruments are broken.
And I wish my horn wasn't broken either,
said Kitty.
Then we could all make music together.
Donnie, Ruff, and Kitty didn't know what else to do, so they sat in the field making their noises over and over.
Ee-yaw!
Woof, woof!
Meow,
Ee-yaw!
Woof, woof!
meow.
From high up in the tree, Billy the bird's ears perked up.
Ee-yaw!
She flew down and followed the sound all the way to the field.
Chirp,
Chirped Billy.
I heard a sound. Was it music?
How could there be music?
Donnie brayed.
The storm that raged and roared ruined all of our instruments. My piano is broken, Ruff has no sticks for his drums, and Kitty's horn is cracked. We can't make music together.
Billy smiled.
That's not true. You can make music without a piano, drums, or a horn.
We can? They asked.
Of course. Just listen to this. Chirp, 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 chirp.
Donnie, Ruff, and Kitty couldn't believe it. Billy was making music without a piano, drums, or a horn. When Billy finished her song, they all clapped.
I wish we could make music like that.
Kitty meowed.
You are already making music,
Billy said.
you just didn't know it.
But how? Donnie hawed and Ruff barked.
Easy.
Billy chirped.
All you have to do is put your voices together and you'll have a song.
So they decided to give it a try. First, they started off quietly.
Yeah,
Woof, woof, meow.
yeah,
Woof, woof, meow.
They were doing it. They were making music. They got even louder, and this time the bird joined in.
yeah,
Woof, woof, meow. Chirp, chirp.
yeah,
Woof, woof, meow. Chirp, chirp.
yeah.
It was the most beautiful music they had ever heard. Donnie, Ruff, Kitty, and Billy wanted to share it with all their friends. They became the best band in all of Bremen and lived happily ever after. The end.
The kids on the bus all learn with first. Learn with first. First.
First, your child's app for the complete learning experience. Numbers, letters, colors, and more. Dozens of games, videos, and activities are all waiting for your little one to learn and enjoy. First, the complete learning experience. Search for BF100 on the app stores.
Download first.
Adventure, fun, and fantasy are waiting on the shelf. A story's so much better with a friend than by yourself. The cover picture is a doorway to another land. So gather round and let the story take us by the hand. We're telling tales with friends, and we've got plans for you. Gaga's playing Goldilocks, this berry's peekaboo. Here's Tilly, Larry, and our Harry. Great to have you all. Stories are for everyone, the young, old, big, and small. Tales and Friends. Cinderella. Cinderella is played by Giggs. The fairy is played by Gaga. Sir Winston Ruffles is played by Harry the Bunny. Cinderella was a very special little girl. She had no family, and her only friends were the animals in the woods. All the birds, mice, and squirrels just loved Cinderella, and she loved them right back. One day, a little birdie whispered something in her ear.
There's going to be a grand ball in the palace this evening,
Said the birdie.
Sir Winston Ruffles, the most famous singer in all the land, will be performing right when the clock strikes midnight. And we are all invited.
Cinderella was so excited that she gave the birdie a big kiss and ran off to her house to pick out a dress to wear. But when she opened her closet, all she saw were old clothes. Maybe she could buy something new, she thought. But when she opened her purse, she found no money. What was she to do? She fell to the floor and started to cry. Just then, a fairy appeared and asked why such a sweet girl was so upset. Cinderella cried,
I can't go to the grand ball tonight because I don't have anything nice to wear, and I won't be able to meet Sir Winston Ruffles, the most famous singer in all the land.
The fairy fluttered down and said, That is sad. What will you do? But Cinderella had an idea.
Could you cast a magic spell to make me a shiny new dress?
The fairy wiped the tears from Cinderella's cheeks.
My dearest Cinderella, magic will happen only if you help yourself first, the fairy said as she flew out the window. Cinderella decided that's exactly what she would do. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work making her own dress. Cinderella took old clothes from her closet, cut them up, and began sewing them back together to make something new and beautiful. But the clock was ticking faster and faster. I'm running out of time. I might not make it to Sir Winston Ruffles' performance. So she started cutting and sewing as fast as she could. As Cinderella worked, her animal friends came to the windowsill. Look, Cinderella needs our help, they shouted. So the birdies, the mice, and the squirrels all jumped into action and started to help. Now everyone was cutting and sewing as fast as they could. When they were done, Cinderella stepped in front of the mirror to reveal a shiny new dress. She was so happy and thankful, but then she looked at the clock. Oh no, it's almost midnight. I won't make it in time to see Sir Winston Ruffles. Cinderella fell to her knees and started to cry. Just then, the fairy fluttered through the window. My dear Cinderella, she said, you did your part. You helped yourself by making a beautiful dress. Now it's time for me to help you get to the ball on time. With some magic. The fairy smiled and waved her wand high into the air, casting a magical spell. Suddenly, the pumpkin by the door turned into a carriage. The mouse turned into a horse, and the squirrel turned into a driver. Your carriage awaits, my dear, said the fairy. Cinderella thanked the fairy, jumped into the carriage, and off they went as fast as they could towards the palace. As the carriage pulled up to the palace, Cinderella opened the door, jumped out, and ran up the stairs towards the ballroom. Just as she reached the top of the steps, one of her slippers slipped off, and she fell to the ground. She looked up at the clock and saw that it was almost midnight. She was too late. Just then, she heard a kind voice ask, "Is this yours, my friend?" She wiped away her tears and saw Sir Winston Ruffles, the most famous singer in all the land, holding her slipper. He helped her up off the ground and slid the slipper back onto her foot. "May I escort you to the ballroom?" he asked. Cinderella smiled and walked with him towards the ballroom just as the clock struck midnight. The end.
Your child's app for the complete learning experience. Numbers, letters, colors, and more. Dozens of games, videos, and activities are all waiting for your little one to learn and enjoy. First, the complete learning experience. Search for BF100 on the app stores.
Download first.
The Emperor's New Clothes. The Emperor is played by Hugg. The Crooked Tailor is played by Al. The Knight is played by Harry the Bunny. And the children are played by Goo Goo and Gaga. Once upon a time, there was an emperor who cared only about what people thought of him and how he looked. He didn't care about being a good man or a wise king. One day, a crooked tailor came to the castle and told the emperor about a special new fabric he had invented. "This fabric is so special," said the tailor, "that only smart people like you can see it." The crooked tailor then pretended to take out something from his bag and raised his hands as if he was holding something proudly. "Isn't this shirt beautiful?" the crooked tailor asked. The emperor couldn't see any shirt at all, but didn't want the tailor to think he wasn't smart, so he pretended that he could see it.
As the smartest emperor in the world, I pronounce this the most beautiful fabric I've ever seen.
The emperor gave the crooked tailor a big box of gold and told him to make a whole new wardrobe of clothes using this special fabric. The tailor took the gold and got to work pretending to make the emperor new clothes. Every day, the emperor would look in on the tailor and see him sitting at his loom, hard at work making invisible clothes. The emperor then called his most important knight to his chamber.
Everyone knows I'm the smartest emperor in the world, he said. So obviously I can see these clothes. But can you?
He asked. The knight looked hard at the crooked tailor's hands, but couldn't see any clothes at all. Not wanting the king to think he wasn't smart, the knight lied and said, "As the smartest knight in the world, I think these are the most beautiful clothes I've ever seen." The king wanted everyone to see how smart he was, so he made a royal proclamation.
I shall hold a parade through the kingdom for all of you to see my special new clothes.
The parade day has come. By now, everyone knew that only smart people could supposedly see the clothes. So nobody wanted other people to think they weren't smart, and therefore they pretended to see that the king was wearing beautiful clothes, even though he was just in his underpants. As most of the crowd cheered for the emperor and his clothes, a shout was heard. "The emperor has no clothes!" It was a child who clearly saw the emperor wasn't wearing anything but his underpants. The child shouted again, "The emperor has no clothes!" There was a hush in the crowd, and everyone looked at the boy. They didn't know what to do. Another child stood up and said, "Yeah, the emperor has no clothes!" Then another child said it. And another. And then some adults joined them. Soon, everyone was shouting that the emperor wasn't wearing any clothes. The emperor tried to convince the people that they were wrong, but it was too late. Everyone had learned the truth. He wasn't wearing any clothes, only his underwear. So he covered himself with his hands and ran away in embarrassment. That day, the whole kingdom learned an important lesson from that little boy. And that lesson is that while it's important to listen to others, you should trust your own opinion and speak up when you know something or someone is doing something wrong. The end.
Child's app for the complete learning experience. Numbers, letters, colors, and more. Dozens of games, videos, and activities are all waiting for your little one to learn and enjoy. First, the complete learning experience. Search for BF100 on the app stores.
Download first.
Adventure, fun, and fantasy are waiting on the shelf. A story's so much better with a friend than by yourself. The cover picture is a doorway to another land. So gather round and let the story take us by the hand. We're telling tales with friends, and we've got plans for you. Tales and Friends. The Ugly Duckling. The Ugly Duckling is played by Larry. The ducklings are played by the color crew. Mommy Duck is played by Tilly. Once upon a time, there was a family of ducks that lived in a wonderful water fountain. There was a mommy and her kids, Donnie, Deborah, Dana, and Denny. They all had beautiful, fluffy yellow feathers, shiny beaks, and their quacks sounded like lovely music. Every Sunday, families would come and visit the fountain, feed the ducks, and watch their tricks. The best trick was Donnie's diving duck routine. It was a very special trick. Donnie would toss a ball into the fountain, dive under the water, and bring it back up in his beak. Everyone loved it. One day, the mommy duck had an announcement. There was going to be a new duckling joining their happy family. She pointed to the egg sitting in the nest. Soon, the egg would hatch and the duck family would have a new duckling. The ducks couldn't wait. They were so excited to see their duckling sister or brother. They waited and waited until one day, the egg finally started to crack. The duck family gathered around and got ready to clap for their beautiful new duckling. But they didn't clap. This duckling was so different. He didn't have soft yellow feathers or a shiny beak like they did, and he wasn't as gentle as they were. Instead, he was red all over with a huge beak the size of his head. And his quacking was more like a loud honk. Oh no, they didn't know what to do. The mommy duck went over to quack hello to her little baby. She didn't care if the duckling looked different. She loved him anyway and named him Dave. But Donnie, Deborah, Dana, and Denny weren't so nice. They didn't like their new brother because he was so different. They didn't call him Dave. They called him the Ugly Duckling. They laughed at his loud honk, and they wouldn't teach him any of their tricks, especially the most famous trick of them all, Donnie's diving duck routine. One day, when the families came to the fountain, Donnie was going to perform his spectacular routine. Donnie stood at the top of the fountain and threw the ball down towards the water. But the ball didn't hit the water. It landed on the ground and bounced away. Donnie flew after it, trying to catch it in his beak. But the ball kept bouncing and landed right under a big, heavy stone. Donnie tried with all his might to move the stone, but it was too heavy for him. As he struggled to free the ball, the crowd was waiting for him to return with the ball in his beak, but Donnie didn't come back. He was too embarrassed. Oh no, Donnie couldn't do his trick. Just then, the Ugly Duckling came running out and said he could help Donnie get the ball from under the stone. Donnie wasn't sure how he could help, but he wanted the ball back and stepped aside so the Ugly Duckling could try. The Ugly Duckling flew as fast as he could to the rock. He lowered his shoulder and pushed until he finally shoved the heavy stone off the ball. Donnie picked up the ball with his beak and returned to the fountain. The crowd let out a big cheer. After everyone stopped clapping, Donnie thanked his new brother for saving the show. He even gave him a big hug. Just then, the rest of the ducklings came over and lifted him up on their shoulders. They paraded him around the fountain. Suddenly, he didn't feel sad or ugly anymore. He started quacking his special quack and waving his feathers. He felt happy because everyone appreciated him, not for how he looked, but for who he was. That night, the ducks apologized and said, "We're very sorry we were mean to you. Will you forgive us? We promise never to call you the Ugly Duckling again. Instead, we will call you Dave Duck." "That sounds great," Dave Duck said as he splashed his feathers in the fountain. He felt special and loved, and they all lived happily ever after. The end.
BabyFirst. Click the subscribe button below.